Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure review. Today we are jumping into the time machine and traveling way back to the early and mid 90s as we take a look at this pair of action figures from Playmates Toys. We have the WildC.A.T.S, the Wild Covert Action Teams. Based off of Jim Lee's popular comic books that were published in the early 90s. This was a great line of toys. The release of these figures were to coincide with the cartoon series produced by Nelvana Studios, who are also well known for producing Eek the Cat on Fox TV. The Wildcat figures are great. Much like Playmates TMNT figures, the quality of these figures were awesome. Their builds were nice. Their detailing was there. The paint application was decent. Lots of accessories, and as always, excellent package design. On our left, we have the supreme leader of the Daemonite Empire. We have Helspont. This was the big baddie. He kind of looked like a weird mix of like Colossus, Spawn, and Ghost Rider. He had a flaming head, crazy mask that almost kind of looked like Wolverine. He had the metallic armor. Not too memorable as a villain, but he just looked really badass. On our right, we have Warblade. He was the metamorphing crossbreed warrior. So this guy was half cherubim and half human. If I remember correctly, he was also Korean. He was kind of like the slasher / Wolverine type character on the WildC.A.T.S team. And this pair of action figures, I'm not sure which store these came from because I got these off of eBay. I used to have these back in the day, but I sold my collection of WildC.A.T figures, and then recently I was very nostalgic for them, and I found them for really super cheap prices, and I bought them, and I don't know, I've been stoked ever since. So the original price tag is still on these figures, and these were only $5.99. Which is a steal by today's standards. You're looking at a figure that's maybe anywhere between 5.5 to 6 inches tall. The articulation, it's very limited. You know, back in the 90s, they weren't as crazy articulated as figures are now. I want to say a guy like this might be 6 points of articulation. You know, the head, the waist, and the arms and legs. But you can see, as you can see right here, the detailing's nice. The sculpting's all right. You know, the proportions are beautiful. Wonderful detailed cape that's flowing around. It has a display base. Looks like it has a trading card. And looks like it even comes with a mini comic book, too, in the back, which is awesome. Likewise with Warblade, great looking figure. I do like the silver finish on him. I think it's a nice shade of silver. The one thing that's always bothered me with this figure is his pose. Even though he's articulated, he's kind of in this like crouching position. So he's always kind of like, he's always hunched over and his knees are bent. The sculpting on this guy is a little bit on the softer side, so you're not getting like a super crisp face. And the paint application, it's a little bit sloppy in some areas. But it's a great figure overall. I think it's wonderful. It's a nice piece of comic book and toy history. Around this time period, McFarlane was making great strides, producing the Spawn line of action figures. And McFarlane was also producing a couple of Image comic book characters as well. He was not only was he doing Spawn, but he also had figures of like the Max and Wetworks. Playmates, not only were they doing WildC.A.T.S, but they also were producing Savage Dragon from Eric Larson's line of Image comic books. So yeah, it was a great time to be a comic book fan and a toy collector because it was cool. They were taking the really cool and hip comics and they were making toys out of them. And that was just like a dream for like many of us. On the back of the box, so this was from WildC.A.T Series 1. Wave 1, it was a nice, decent wave. They gave you like 90% of the WildC.A.T team. They gave you Helspont and the Daemonite. You know, with the exception of Voodoo and Void They didn't, you're dismissing those characters. They never made an Emp figure, but for the most part, you got a solid core of 5 figures from the team. The back of the box is awesome. Nice meaty description about the comic book, the world. They highlight the different accessories. So Helspont comes with a molecular blaster, a biogenerated fusion ball, and he comes with a display stand. And much like the old G.I. Joe figures, he has a file card, a lot to read. And Warblade's more of the same. They highlight his different accessories. You can swap out his forearm for like a normal arm. He has a communicator. And if you want to give him like a battle axe, you can just swap out one of the arms for the battle axe. And then his display base is the WildC.A.T.S logo. And much like Helspont, he also has a very meaty file card. Yeah, great figures, great memories. Big fan of the WildC.A.T.S comic book, big fan of the figures. This is really an era that I kind of really wish they would revisit. Every now and then, DC, they'll try taking a stab at these characters again. I remember in the early 2000s, or it might have been early or mid-2000s, they tried relaunching WildC.A.T.S again with Jim Lee and Grant Morrison. But for whatever reason, it never went beyond the first issue. I don't know why that was. For me, it was exciting because I thought that they were finally going to bring the WildC.A.T.S into the DC universe and, present them in a much more modern take, but it never went beyond the first issue. The character of Grifter, he's popped up, enough times in the modern DC universe. He's been in the Batman comic books, and McFarlane Toys is producing a Grifter figure. But for me, it's always going to be about the 90s WildC.A.T.S. I love Jim Lee's artwork during this time period. I love the character designs, and the stories weren't the best, but I don't know, there was just something about that era. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and I think that's kind of missing right now. Comic books are fun, but there's so much focus on live action nowadays. Especially with DC and the MCU. But yeah, if they could revisit this time period and, better yet, if they could give us modern, like, engineered figures of these guys, I would love that. All right, so let's wrap this video up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber viewer, thank you so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. All right, later.